Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You know, it's a good week. Lots of work to do in the day job. I think for both of us this week, kind of a little bit tired tonight, but I'm actually recording the podcast is a nice little break from sort of work activities.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I had a pretty busy week switching from my political hat to my soccer hat. I'm kind of looking forward to that. My day job, I cover City Hall for the Calgary Herald, and obviously this week was Calgary's municipal election. So very busy couple of days for me, and it's been a busy couple of weeks in the lead up to that. But no, excited to shift gears and hold our usual Thursday night discussion about local soccer.
Yeah, and we're going to get right into that here. But if you happen to be a new listener, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about, Scott?
So we talk about soccer in Calgary at the amateur, post-secondary, and professional levels. We talk about Cavalry FC and the Calgary Wild. And at this time of year, we talk a lot about Calgary's post-secondary soccer teams from the universities of Calgary, Mount Royal University, and SAIT.
And this week, our topics will include a preview of the CPL playoff matchup between York United and Cavalry FC. We're also going to talk about all the post-secondary teams. There are 6 different post-secondary teams based out of Calgary that'll be in the playoffs this weekend, and we'll talk about all those matches. And we have another topic we're going to jump into here, also post-secondary related. Scott, should we tease it a little bit right now about what we're going to talk about?
For sure, yeah. We're going to talk about a proposed stadium project at the University of Calgary. This seems to be in the very early stages at the moment, but it's an initiative led by a Dinos football alumni group that you came across online several weeks ago, and we've been kind of waiting to talk about it. But yeah, we're going to talk about that project tonight. And I think we'll talk a little bit about the Calgary Wild as well, as some of their players will be in action for their respective national teams this weekend.
But let's start off with the big playoff matchup on Sunday afternoon with Cavalry FC.
Hi, this is Ali Musi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
York United will come to Calgary this weekend to take on Cavalry Sunday afternoon, 4 p.m. kickoff at Spruce Meadows. Jason, we're into the playoffs after a fairly lackluster regular season for Cavalry, at least by their own high standards. This is a do-or-die match to advance in the postseason and hopefully retain their 2024 championship.
There's been some talk about, including us on this podcast, about how this season didn't really measure up to some of the other ones. I'm going to take the optimistic approach on this one and say that, look, they got third place in the end. They have this home playoff game in this advantageous situation. A lot of talent on this team. So based on what happened in the regular season, they didn't have better regular seasons than Ottawa or Forge, but they can still beat either of those teams. Now, whether they can do that, I guess we'll see. But first thing they have to do is beat York first.
Yeah, so let's talk about York and how they made it to this game, because that in and of itself is a really interesting story, right? York played Halifax in Halifax on Wednesday night to determine which of those two teams would come face Cavalry this weekend. And that was a game full of a lot of drama and excitement, right? It finished 1-1 and then went to extra time. They had to have some lengthy rain and lightning delays. And then there were 2 late goals in extra time, meaning it finished 2-2. And then penalty shootout, York prevailed. You know, a lot of drama out on the East Coast. And considering that York played, 120 minutes of football just a few days ago with a dramatic penalty kick shootout after that, to go back home, ride the high for a day or so, and then hop back on a plane to head to the other side of the country for another, do or die playoff game. I wonder how fresh they'll be coming into this one.
I would say that compared to Cavalry, they'll be not as fresh as Cavalry. How about that? So that's the advantage of this having third place, is that you can sit around and not have to travel, and you've got these extra days. You can just prepare like it's a normal match week, instead of the frenzied kind of 2 matches in a week, and both of them being on the road for York. So it's an advantageous situation for the Cavs, I think.
Yeah, definitely. they are coming into it on a bit of a rough patch, right? They didn't win any of their last 4 games. The last time they played York, they actually lost. That was the 3-1 defeat in York on September 5th. And earlier this season, York actually did beat Cavalry at home, I believe, 1-0 in late July. So a team that they've struggled against in the last few months, as we've mentioned, a game where Cavalry will be the heavy favorites, if only for the fact that they have not had 2 plane trips and 2+ hours of playoff football in the last 4 or 5 days. York is a tough team for Cavalry. They seem to get under Cavalry's skin when they play. We've seen a lot of yellow cards in their meetups this year. We know that York can play a very physical game. So I think for Cavalry, it's about keeping your heads and not letting the dark arts get to you if that is the strategy that York employs.
York is not the only team that kind of plays that sort of game, but for whatever reasons, they have, exactly like you said, they somehow get under some of the Cavalry players' skin. And that's going to have to be something that they'll have to be careful of. You don't want to be in a situation where your reaction to the dark arts in the first 15 or 20 minutes gives you a yellow card and you're playing on a yellow for the rest of the match.
So, Jason, because we record these episodes Thursday night, we don't find out until after our episode is released who's fit and who's on the injury list for Cavalry. That information always comes out in the pregame press conference, which I believe will be Friday morning. But we do have a couple of question marks, don't we? Tobias Warshevsky didn't dress in Cavalry's last regular season game against Vancouver. And we learned after the game from the club that was due to illness. So we're not sure how ill he was, if he'll be back, but that is one question mark we have for Sunday. And then we also have question marks for Diego Gutierrez, who has been injured for the last little while, but we have heard Tommy Wheeldon Jr. say that he is close to returning.
Sergio Camargo went down in the first half of that match, and he was replaced rather capably by Nico Moroniak. But that being said, having Camargo out there he's had such a great year and is obviously one of their key players. So if he can't go, that'll be a loss for sure. But again, we don't know his status at this point in time.
Hi, this is Aislinn Phillips, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, so let's talk about U Sports. We have playoff action this week on both the men's and the women's side. Let's start off with the men's side. Mount Royal is going to be playing at home. They will face Trinity Western on Friday at noon, I guess. And the Dinos will be playing in Vancouver on Friday evening. They will be playing University of Fraser Valley.
Yeah, which is a team that they actually drew earlier this year in a preseason game in mid-August. So they have seen the Fraser Valley Cascades before, but obviously both teams have played a lot of soccer since then. I think the most interesting thing about the University of Fraser Valley is that is the team that Matteo Brezina plays for. Matteo Brezina is the Canada West top scorer this year. He's got 13 goals in 13 games, and he's actually the reigning men's player of the year in Canada West and scored 8 goals in 2024. So assuming he's healthy for this one, I think the Dinos' focus will have to be on keeping him off the score sheet.
Absolutely.
I think Trinity Western actually finished 4th in Pacific this year, but they're a team that I often associate with a strong performance in the opening round of the playoffs. I know they've often knocked the Dinos out of the postseason, often in a fashion that is very disappointing for Dinos fans with late goals or penalty shootouts, that kind of thing. But yeah, they didn't have the strongest year in 2025. They finished the season with a 5-6-4 record, and they've actually only won 2 of their 6 games that they played in October. So it hasn't been too good of a season for Trinity Western.
So in these matches, the Trinity Western versus Mount Royal match, they will play the winner of the University of Victoria and the University of Lethbridge. They're playing also at Mount Royal on Friday. The winners of those 2 games will play each other on Sunday, and that will determine who goes to the Canada West final next weekend.
And if the Dinos are successful in their game against University of the Fraser Valley, they would play the winner of a matchup between the UBC Thunderbirds and Alberta Golden Bears on Sunday, 2 p.m. at UBC's home field.
All right, let's talk about the women's division in U Sports. I didn't really realize, Scott, about how the playoff formats differ between the men's and the women's. And I don't think it's anything different than it was last year, but somehow the differences became very apparent to me when I was prepping for this episode.
How so?
Well, the way they have it set up is that this weekend on the men's side, they play 2 matches to determine like 2 finalists for the Canada West final. And that's all that happens next weekend. But on the women's side, they only play 1 match this weekend, and next weekend they play a Final 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this weekend, those matchups will include University of Victoria Vikes against the University of Calgary Dinos, Friday 6 p.m. kickoff at McMahon Stadium, and the UBCO Heat taking on the Mount Royal University Cougars on Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. at Mount Royal University.
So for the Dinos, this is a rematch of the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. So considering there is a lot of carryover between last year's Dinos women's team and this year's, I think they'll be looking for some revenge, I would think.
Absolutely. A lot of motivation in that one. And I think the Dinos will definitely be favored, right? They had a phenomenal regular season, almost finished unbeaten, if not for a loss in the final game of the regular season against Mount Royal last weekend. University of Victoria, comparatively, they finished 4th in the Pacific Division with a 5-5-4 record.
And it's probably worth mentioning, I know you included in the notes here, Scott, that Tamara Jurasic from Mount Royal, she ended up leading Canada West in scoring this year.
Yeah, she scored 9 goals, which is the most in Canada West. I thought that was interesting. I thought that a player from the UBC Thunderbirds would have been the leading scorer, but I guess they split the scoring among the roster a little more, I guess. But Jason, I didn't realize this about UBC this year. I knew that they had a 14-0 record, but I didn't realize until I saw it the other day on social media, they actually didn't concede a goal this season.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they went 14-0 and they didn't allow any goals.
That's remarkable.
Yep, it is. I think, and if you look at their scores, right, I think 3-0, 4-0, 1-0, 1-0, 2-0, 4-0, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 3-0. So as strong as the Dinos have been this year, I think you can't escape the fact that UBC has been on another level. And I think for the Dinos, they're going to win the Canada West Championship. Obviously, this is a few games away still, but they're probably going to have to go through the UBC T-Birds.
Yeah, I think that would be a remarkable upset if the T-Birds somehow didn't make it to next weekend's action. Before we move on to talking about SAIT, we wanted to discuss something that we ran across here a few weeks ago and is, I would say, pretty intriguing stuff.
Absolutely, Jason. I want to give you credit for finding this quite a while back, but there's a Dinos football alumni group that is called Dinos Fifth Quarter, and they have a website, and on their website they have a tab that takes you to a proposed stadium project on the University of Calgary campus. It's called Dinosaur Stadium, and it's touted as a future home for the Dinos varsity sports programs, as well as potentially a home for minor and community and high school sport in Calgary, including high school football. So really intriguing initiative. Obviously, this isn't something that I think has been approved yet, but they've got renderings and drawings on their website, and they've got some info and detail. So it's something that, it seems to be a concept with a little bit of momentum.
I think that the Dinos football alumni are a pretty well-connected, well-heeled, and organized and devoted group. So I think that, probably not just some pie-in-the-sky dreaming here. These alumni are probably in positions where they can either solicit donations or provide them themselves that could go a long way to helping build this stadium. There are some renderings out there. We will include on our social media some of the information of how to check it all out. But it seems like the plan is really quite specific. Like they've mapped out the location. They've talked about details about what it would look like. The seating capacity, the facilities around it. Like it's a pretty fleshed out concept.
Yeah, absolutely. It calls for a 7,500 seat capacity football stadium with covered bleachers on three sides. And at the end of one of the end zones, they propose to build a center of excellence that would include team locker rooms, a strength and conditioning center, a study hall, an event space, athletic therapy space, and coaches' offices. And yeah, I think this is one of the paid parking lots at the U of C. So it is on campus. I'm not sure the level of cooperation with the university to take away that parking and build a stadium there instead. But definitely intrigued by this prospect and pretty excited, to be honest.
We know that the university owns McMahon Stadium, but realistically speaking, McMahon isn't an ideal fit for the Dinos football or soccer programs. Really, it's too big for what they need. This would be a really intimate setting. It would be right there in the heart of campus. It would be a really cool setup. And if you want to look at it from like a soccer lens, a soccer perspective, I could easily imagine, like you could say the Calgary Wild, for example. Could you imagine what it would be like to have a 7,500 seat stadium within like a 1 block walk of the university district with all the stuff going on there for, pregame and march to the stadium? Like it could be much more in line with what we've seen in regards to other stadium projects that were in like downtown cores and in other parts of North America, even though this isn't the downtown core, but it would have a lot of those sort of features.
It's not downtown, but it's no longer outskirts of the city by any means, right? Like, I wouldn't call McMahon Stadium inner city, but it is off the train line, and so is the University of Calgary campus, obviously. So yeah, I feel like this project ticks a lot of boxes, and it's a project that I hope multiple stakeholders will embrace. As the website kind of outlines, they see it as the future home for high school football as well in Calgary, which currently like Hellard Field and Shoaldice Athletic Park is where most of the high school football games are played. So I feel like a stadium at the U of C would be well utilized, not just by the Dinos teams, but by other sports teams as well. And yeah, I don't know about the Wild, but it absolutely would be a better fit capacity-wise. Obviously, I hope this comes to fruition, Jason.
Yeah, even if it turned into a situation where maybe it wasn't the home of a pro team, it was a place where we could see League One Alberta matches, get something like U Sports National Championship there and Dinos matches on a regular basis. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Scott, this is kind of an interesting and exciting time from a stadium infrastructure point of view in Calgary. We've got the Mount Royal Stadium, which is basically ready to go. It's not quite as grand a vision as what the Dinos could potentially have. But that being said, the MRU Stadium is going to be a really welcome addition to the Calgary soccer scene. And then this Dino Stadium, it could really be something. And we could see two real premier like soccer venues spring to life here in maybe a matter of a few years.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. We talked about the MRU turf field project in our last episode, but it still looks like they're working on it. The field itself looks great. It looks like it's ready to be played on, to be honest, but it does still look like they're doing stuff around the perimeter or three sides of the perimeter. And we were thinking that maybe they're adding more seats, which would be cool. It could be like a 1,000 capacity soccer stadium. Doesn't look like it has lines for other sports, and MRU doesn't have a football or field hockey team, right? So you're right. We could have two state-of-the-art university athletic facilities in Calgary in the next few years. Well, maybe 5.
Yeah. Well, it's maybe something that we will try and see if we can find out some more information going forward, but it's sure interesting to talk about right now, and definitely has caught our attention.
This is Canadian FIFA assistant referee Mike Barbigan, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So it's not just the youth sports teams kicking off their postseasons this weekend. SAIT will also be action down in Raymond. Both the men's and the women's Trojans teams will be facing the same possible opponents, which is a pretty interesting coincidence. The unbeaten women will face the winner of a match between the Lethbridge Kodiaks and the Nate Ooks on Friday, this Saturday at 10 a.m. And the winner of that match will play in the ACAC final on Sunday at 3 p.m., also in Raymond.
On the men's side, it's exactly the same scenario, just slightly different times for the matches. Lethbridge plays Nate on Friday, and then on Saturday afternoon, the winner of that match will play SAIT, and then on Sunday afternoon will be the final. So SAIT men moved up to number 2 in the national rankings, and the women are at number 2 in the national rankings. It's entirely possible and actually would not be surprising to see the Trojans. They could sweep both of these divisions. I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, because it's always hard to know what's going on up north because we don't see what's going on up north. But they're in a good position, I'd say.
Yeah, 2 dominant powerhouses in the South Division. And I think it would be a pretty cool story if both SAIT teams could pull out the championship this weekend. And it would be even cooler if they could follow that up by both winning a national championship not too long after. That would be, I don't know if that would be unprecedented or not, but it would definitely be pretty rare in the world of college sports.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Hunter, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Last segment, we're going to talk about some Calgary Wild and NSL news. The Wild have completed their season, but a whole bunch of their players are still playing this weekend, actually.
Yeah, a ton of them were called up by their respective national teams. So we saw Tegan and Keelan Stewart called up to the Wales U21 team for a pair of friendlies against Switzerland. And we saw Jackie Burns, the team's second choice goalkeeper, called up by Northern Ireland to play in a UEFA Nations League game, or 2 games rather, against Iceland.
Jackie Sawicki has been called up for the Philippines to play a friendly against Uzbekistan. Michaela Moore is going to be with New Zealand, and they're going to be facing a couple of big opponents in Mexico and the U.S. I think that U.S. game is in Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken. So that'd be a pretty cool stadium to play in, I would think.
And then Sonia O'Neill and Michelle Romero, they'll be playing for Venezuela against Brazil and Chile. So yeah, how many is that? 7 of the Wild's players called up by their countries this week?
Yeah, I think that's 7. And by the way, I'm just going to throw out just one extra bit of kudos. This is Sonia O'Neill's first call up to the national team since she gave birth. So that's kind of cool. You know, I know they have been playing, but she hasn't been called to the squad. So it's been a few years since she's joined the national team. So, kudos to her.
And then last bit of stuff we can mention about the Calgary Wild is that the Wild Roses supporters group announced their end of season awards, and they awarded Grace Storty Player of the Year, and unused goalkeeper Sarah Kelty Dilling was named for having the best engagement with fans. Well, she did it was like the goalkeeper, what did they call it in the corner? It was like the keeper's corner, right? That was kind of neat, and she did some stuff at her the school she taught at.
One more NSL note before we wrap it up here is congrats to Calgarian Kaylee Hunter with AFC Toronto. She won the NSL Rookie of the Year award. Not really surprised, I don't think.
No, I think she scored, 16 goals this season or something like that?
Yeah, something along that line. So yeah, and she's been called up to play for the Canadian women's national team here in this international window too. So we'll have to pay attention to see how that all turns out for her. But that's a big step up. And I guess now we know why she wasn't called to the U17 World Cup.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this episode downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links to buy my book, Here Come the Cavalry, which is all about the history of professional soccer in Calgary. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on X, Instagram, or Blue Sky, where our username is @YYCSoccer403. Thanks for listening.